seeing the events that happened on Wednesday, obviously seeing the reaction first by the NBA players, WNBA players, Major League Baseball, National Football League, National Hockey League, seeing the pain that those different athletes in those different sports faced and shown through the latest police shooting of Jacob Blake last week. And obviously the NBA made a big stand, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks, by at least planning to forfeit, but then end up being postponing their playoff game against the Magic. We're going to take a loss because players starting with George Hill and Sterling Brown and the rest of their teammates kind of backed them up and saying, you know what, it doesn't feel right to play. We need to make a stand. We need to make some sort of show of solidarity to say this is not okay. And obviously that led to other playoff games, Oklahoma City Thunder and the Rockets, Lakers, Portland, that later that night all canceled. The NBA playoff games on Thursday were canceled. And then obviously this also had a domino effect. WNBA canceled their games on Wednesday. The NHL put a hold on their playoffs, similar to what the NBA did. 10 Major League Baseball games between Wednesday and Thursday were canceled. In the NFL, different teams throughout the league had practices canceled on Wednesday and Thursday to just have discussions, to just discuss what's going on. Obviously, we had a big movement back in May coming off the George Floyd murder. And we had players protesting, because this is when sports weren't going on. So players are on the street protesting, demonstrating, speaking out for change, wanting change. And now the latest example we see again is now that leagues are playing, we had a walkout, you had a boycott, whatever you want to call it. But that was the biggest move that happened in sports this past week that took place on Wednesday and Thursday. And what I want to get into, what I want to kind of use from this is to at least show and highlight the importance of sports. To me, at least, that was displayed this past week. The importance of the games being played, the importance of the leagues resuming and continuing to play, finish their seasons, whether it's baseball, whether it's the NBA, whether it's NHL. As you heard a lot of players, the NBA was the closest league to just shutting it down. You have players like LeBron James and teams like the Clippers and the Lakers who are okay with just going home, shutting it down, saying this is enough. You know, we protested, we spoke our piece about why changes to happen. And obviously the same thing happened just a few weeks later. But for me, seeing what the Bucks did, seeing what the NBA did, seeing what the rest of the sports leagues did in conjunction, starting with the Bucks again, highlights the importance of why sports being played for the most part is the best opportunity to actually enact real change. Not just talking about it, but actually enacting real change. Because coming out of this, right, coming out of the Bucks trying to forfeit their game against the Magic, a playoff game nonetheless, just outright saying, you know what, Magic, you can have it. We're not going to play. We don't want to take a postponement. We don't want to delay the game. Your game. We'll see you the next time around, but you have Game 5. You never see that. But the importance of why these games still being played and the importance of the NBA at least keeping their bubble, keeping the playoffs going, is because now you have a real platform and real leverage to actually get what you want. And coming out of this 3-day hiatus, right, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no NBA games, the players and the owners of the NBA agreed to a 3-part plan that will be acted and implemented immediately, which is a formation of a social justice coalition, using a commitment, owners committing to use their NBA facilities as either voting booths, voting locations, or if that's not possible, voter registration booths, just a way to use our facility to make sure that voting one way or another, to register, to actually vote, there is places to do so. And finally, the airing of advertisements centered around voting engagement during playoff games. So obviously now, with this one, the latest one being implemented recently, the more playoff games you watch, the more ads you'll see to encourage you to vote, register to vote, and know, more importantly, how to register and how to vote. So to me, seeing these acts that are tangible, that are implemented immediately, and actually can help carry out change, those are all possible because the leagues are still playing. You see the importance of sports coming out. Because too often, right, in anything, we always discuss change. This would be great if we can do this. We should change this, change these rules. But honestly, how much has change really done in any walk of life, let alone what we've seen in social justice so far? So now you have powerful people, because that's what athletes are. Athletes now, with social media presence, with the attention that we pay to sports, they are powerful people tied to and in alignment with powerful entities, which are these sports leagues and which are these sports teams. When they are united on the same page, change can actually get done. Politicians, We'll listen to sports teams and sports athletes. Governments, same thing. And as we see with the NBA again, real tangible change in the matter of hours was created and implemented just like that. Just because everyone was there in the same spot, right, in Orlando in the bubble, everyone felt the same way, and their voice was united. The frustration was real. So to me, because these leagues are continuing to play, it only strengthens their influence in the community, right? I mean, it makes sense. We still are limited content-wise in what we can consume, what we can watch. So sports, especially since it's gone for 4 months, a lot of average fans are still watching a lot of sports. Baseball, hockey, basketball. So that makes these athletes more visible, right? We see LeBron James more now than we would, let's say, if the NBA wasn't playing and he was just doing work in Los Angeles or Cleveland or Akron or wherever he wants to try to enact change. So because sports are one of the few things we've actually gotten back so far since the virus has just took a stranglehold on the world, but specifically on this country, it brings a lot of attention to them, and that attention brings leverage and power. And now what those athletes have done since going to Orlando is that they brought awareness to injustice, spoke out about why things need to change, and using all that attention that we're paying specifically to the NBA to try to do the right thing, to try to enact change. And honestly, who knows if any of these three changes, the one we just listed above, the Social Justice Coalition, using the NBA facilities as voting centers in one way or another to either register to vote or actually be voting booths, and obviously have advertisements during the playoffs to encourage viewers to vote, who knows if any or all of that's possible if these players are split up, doing their own separate thing in their own communities, and out of the public spotlight. Because if you don't follow any of these players on social media, it's tough for you to see what they're doing. Whereas now, they're on a national stage, they're on ESPN, they're on TNT, they're on ABC. You see these players, and you hear their messages during the game, after the game, in post-game press conferences. So I understand why a lot of these players were, or I should say, felt like coming to the bubble in Orlando was a distraction for change. Right, we'll be focused more on basketball than we would on actually enacting change and getting social justice. I understand that. But for me, at least, I think these events that happened this last week, with playoff games being postponed, with players and teams and owners coming together in a room and actually talking about what can we do from our perspective. We have influence, and we saw the Bucks. When the Bucks postponed or forfeited their game, I should say, or tried to forfeit their game that was eventually postponed, They were in the locker room for 3 hours, and what were they doing? They were making calls, trying to call the mayor, trying to call the governor, trying to have laws, at least in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, passed. They are using their leverage and their attention, their platform for good. Because, they are powerful players. They have influence. Because sports is so popular, because fans now are so into sports more than ever, because we have access to the players, right, social media-wise, we feel more connected to them. And politicians see this. You don't want to go against the team. You don't want to be the one to, shut down the Bucks or not try to give Giannis what he wants social justice-wise. So politicians are listening. Now, for the first time, we're really seeing the power of the players come to the forefront. So to me, I think it's more powerful and change is more possible when these leagues are playing, when these players are playing, and constantly reminding everyone. Every game, pre-game, during the game, after the game. Speaking about what matters to them. And to me, at least, I think nothing highlights this more than last week in that great Clippers-Mavericks game, right? Because we could talk all show about how great Luka Doncic was, Kawhi Leonard was a machine, and that was just in a fun and exciting series to watch the Mavericks push the Clippers. Obviously, they were limited yesterday, but it was just a fun series to watch. Luka Doncic was incredible. Even in the losses, he would still be incredible. It was fun. But after a big Clippers win last week on Tuesday night, Doc Rivers in his post-game press conference was speaking about, and giving his first comments about the Jacob Blake shooting. He was emotional. He was moved. It was powerful. To the point where after the game was over, and the next day on Wednesday, all that was being talked about was Doc Rivers' speech after the game. There wasn't anything about the game being talked about. There wasn't anything about how the Clippers now are up in this series and they have a real chance to take a stranglehold and knock out the Mavericks. There wasn't a discussion about, oh, wow, the Clippers actually look like they're finally starting to gel together and look like a cohesive unit. It was about Doc Rivers' experience as a black man. Speaking about, the talk he gives to his kids when they first get their driver's license. Openly asking why black people in this country love this country when this country doesn't love them back. That's all people were talking about the next day. So to me, the importance of sports, the power of sports, shone bright this last week. Because real change is coming. Real awareness is coming. And obviously it's going to take a very long time for real change to come out in this country. But for me, for the NBA to continue to play, to continue to have that platform to raise awareness, to educate, to me at least, that's where sports' importance really shines through. That's why, to me, it's important and very important for sports to continue to be played, because that platform is there and it will never be bigger than the platform it is right now. And they are using it to, at least in my mind, the best way they can. So selfishly, sure, it's nice to watch basketball games. I don't want to, I've been really enjoying the playoffs. I don't want to see them go away. But more importantly, real change actually what's happened to me. It's important that sports continue, and I'm glad the NBA is continuing, because as we've seen, real change is coming about. And this is the best opportunity for these athletes, for these teams, for these leagues to enact change, to raise awareness, and continuing to push the message of social equality. So I'm just curious in your mind, because, sports is supposed to be unifying. Obviously, we root for different teams, but you enjoy watching the game, you enjoy the competition. Could sports be unifying in the sense that it really does help bring change about in our communities? I think so. I really do. I think this last week speaks volumes to the importance of sports and the real change that actually could happen once these athletes use their platform for good, which they've been doing really since sports resumed this year. So I think sports' impact is more important than ever.